Bhaktivinoda Thakur, very interestingly, he said that actually all the religions fit into this conception. This is his very innovative and revolutionary understanding of classification of all world's religion. He says that the religious principles taught by Muhammad and Jesus Christ are similar to the religious principles taught by Vaishnava sects. Buddhism and Jainism are similar to Shaiva Dharma. This is a scientific consideration of truth regarding religious principles. So he gives a very beautiful, interesting classification of all world religion, which is valuable in itself. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, here's two quotes from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He says, when we start worshipping these demigods as such, then we become, as he says, self-worshippers. He says, by worshipping the demigods, material obstacles will be destroyed. You want to enjoy in this life and this world, and for that you need destruction of the obstacles. And he says, Ganesha removes obstacles in essential worshipers. Surya removes obstacle in hinder dharma or punya. He removes darkness and gives light. Shakti gives mystical perfection to fulfill one's desires. And Rudra are able to perform all types of destructive activities. Those who worship Rudra are able to perform all types of destructive activities. The worshippers of Ganesha, Surya, Shakti, and Rudra are all self-worshippers. Ultimately, he is very much neglectful of this. But as we saw it. But at the same time, this is another quote from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He says, the desire to gain physical health with the sole intention to worship Krishna is also favorable for devotional service. To pray for a good health to a destroyer of obstacles, Ganesha, and at the lotus feet of the destroyer of obstacles, Lord Nrsimha, for the sake of Krishna Bhajana, is certainly acceptable. So, in one sense, all these, needs which we have, they are acceptable. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is very clear about it. But we need how to apply it and how to do it in a proper context so that we would not be stuck in one of these lower levels. This is again the ladder which I showed, the ladder of gradual development of consciousness, how the consciousness gradually develops. And the problem with this, very soon we will see it, is that there is a good chance that we will stuck on one level and will not go to the next level. So instead of gradual elevation of consciousness, it will just remain the stagnation of consciousness on a certain level. So, what is the problem? I stopped yesterday's presentation on this slide. Can we immediately go to the highest possible level? Definitely yes, but there is a problem. The problem lays in whom we hear. Who is there to elevate us to the highest possible level? That's a very interesting quote again by Bhaktivinoda Thakur from Chaitanya Shikshamrita, where he says that if the Prema Bhakta is preaching to you, his power is unlimited and he can elevate you to any possible level. If you happen to meet a Prema Bhakta, just, clutch to his lotus feet, don't leave him until you get Prema yourself. He can definitely give it. He says Bhava Bhakta, again, very elevated devotee on a level of Bhava Bhakta, he can instill sadhana bhakti in any person. By his power, by the power of his words, his example and everything, he can elevate you to the level of sadhana bhakti. And he can, being merciful, can instill power in the sadhana bhaktas. so that they can assume positions similar to his own. So also quite good. If you happen to meet a Bhava Bhakta and you are practicing sadhaka, then Bhava Bhakta can elevate you to your own, to his own level if he is merciful to you. He will not do it to each and everyone, but if he is merciful, he is specifically merciful to somebody, he will elevate you. But by the strength of his personality, the Bhava Bhakta can raise materialistic people who have gained some qualification due to previous deeds to the level of ruchi. So, again, quite good. If you're not practicing, by meeting with Bhava Bhakta, you will not be elevated to level of Bhava, but you will be elevated to the level of ruchi. Not a bad deal. It basically means that Bhava Bhakta has such a strong taste, and you see him and you become infected by the taste which he experiences. And by this experience, you get some understanding of what it means to be a Bhakta on a level of ruchi. But then he says, Vaidya and Raganuga sadhana Bhaktas can instill faith in materialistic people who have attained qualification by previous deeds by dint of their teaching and example. So because most of the preachers which we are dealing with, most of the preachers in ISKCON are still on the level of Vaidya and Raganuga sadhana, and, you know, maybe mostly in the level of Vaidya sadhana. So what we can expect from them, we can expect that they will be able to instill faith, and again, not in everyone. Only in those people, Bhaktivinoda Thakur very specifically says that in those people who have attained qualification by previous deeds. So please don't overestimate your power, the power of your devotion. And to do it, what you need to do by your teaching and example. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is again very specific and very precise. He says, this will work if your teaching and your example are proper, then you will be able to elevate some people in the level of faith, level of shraddha, and then what they will have to do, they will have to practice themselves over this ladder. So that's the problem which we are dealing with. Majority of people who join Krishna consciousness movement, because they join by the influence of those preachers who are on the level of sadhana bhakti, they will get some faith, and then they will try to climb over this ladder, and therefore naturally, according to the level of their advancement which they already reach, they may need to fulfill their material desires in sense gratification, their desires in some other stuff, in good social interaction, so on and so forth, which we in detail studied yesterday. So that's the problem, and as soon as I said that's the problem, the program stopped working. So therefore, because of this phenomena, because majority of people who join ISKCON, they're still on some lower level. There is practices of lower practice together with Krishna consciousness. That there is Pancopasana which is flourishing in ISKCON. This is the advertisement of different temples. I hope you don't see the name of the temples. It doesn't actually matter. Invitation to Durga Puja from ISKCON temples. Why? Because people need it. Because we cater to their needs. And again, as I said, it's not necessarily too bad, but may not be too bad. So, because even if you don't officially celebrate Durga Puja in ISKCON temple, still there is some sort of practices mixed together with pure devotional service, like, you may have some second level of, you can see Prabhupada's picture on the background. It's not yoga studio, it's ISKCON temple. So, it's going on. It's the second level of elevation. People, So we can see this sort of practices. Why? Because people need some, some health. They're health conscious. And, in ISKCON temples, we take advantage of this. And of course, the third level, Ganesh worship, because he has these two beautiful wives, Riddhi and Siddhi, success and prosperity. Oh, I already told that we have so many courses which teach us how to achieve success. And technically speaking, it's Ganesh worship. And of course, renunciation is really flourishing in our brahmachari ashrams, which look like, as if the primordial chaos just in the beginning of creation or something like this. So Lord Shiva is definitely has something to do with all this. So in reality we have it, and what will happen, you may worship Krishna, you may chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, but really you mean Durga. And then, there is Durga with flute. And there is Ganesh with flute too. No problem. There is Ganesh dancing on Kali snake, no problem. And definitely there is Shiva, which is playing the flute. So, in reality, because your prayojana is not proper, because you don't really fix your prayojana in a proper way, you're practicing Krishna consciousness, but you want to achieve something else. And the next picture is very interesting. Actually, this is the picture of Krishna. But if you just look at him, you will not be able to recognize whether it's Krishna or Shiva. Srila Prabhupada would never approve such a picture of Krishna, because it's not Krishna. You think it's Krishna. You imagine it's Krishna, but in reality it's somebody else. So I remember once I was talking with Srila Radhanath Maharaj, and we were talking about one preacher who is outside of ISKCON. He used to be a part of ISKCON, but he was outside of ISKCON at that time. And I asked him, what's his philosophy, whom he is worshipping. He says, he's worshipping Krishna. But which Krishna? I don't really know. So that's the point which we have to be very clear, We're all worshipping Krishna, but which Krishna? It's a big question. So that's the problem which we are dealing with. And the process of secularization is the process of eclipsing Paravidya by Aparavidya. There are so much varieties of Aparavidya which are useful, practical, they are okay, but when the Paravidya is eclipsed by Aparavidya, when the transcendental knowledge is eclipsed by Aparavidya, that's then the religion or the spiritual movement becomes mundane. And that's unfortunate. And we have to really be clear that this is already going on full speed. So how to avoid the eclipsing it? If the Aparavidya exists somewhere in the corner, and you use it because you need it, it's fine. But when the Paravidya is eclipsed by Aparavidya, that's a big problem. And what we can see, as the sheep while traveling becomes there is this, how you call this, shells? The shell grow on the bottom of the ship, and the ship starts slowing down its course. In the same way, this process of secularization actually loses, the religious movement loses its momentum by the process of secularization. People become preoccupied with all kinds of mundane activity, and they still think that this is all religious, this is all spiritual, this is all good, and they don't even distinguish between them. Recently, one lady devotee from America called me, and she said, she complained to me that there is a very good Telegram channel where they put Prabhupada's lecture for every day. On this day, Prabhupada would give this lecture, they put it. And all of a sudden, they started adding to this channel, because there are 7,000 subscribers, they started adding to this channel all kinds of advertisement. Astrologers, and this dance, and this vastu, or whatever. And she started complaining. She said that innocent new devotees, they who are members of this channel, who are subscribers of this channel, for them there is no difference between astrology and Srila Prabhupada. It's already reality. They don't distinguish between the two. For them, it's practically on the same level of authority. Because it's so much spread in ISKCON. Hopefully again, I will explain what to do. Hopefully. Anyway, so this 5 different levels of elevation, they can be roughly divided into 2 categories of karma and jnana. And we all know this famous verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhukti Mukti Spriha Yavat Pishachi Hridi Vartate Tavat Bhakti Sukhasyartha Katham Abhyudayo Bhavet. How you can experience the sukha, the happiness, the bliss of bhakti, if these 2 witches, 2 ghosts of bhukti and mukti live within your heart. Srila Rupa Goswami is very heavy. He said, unless you get rid completely of all these desires, forget about experiencing the bliss of bhakti. We have to be very clear that ultimately we have to reach the level when all these desires of karma and jnana are not bothering us anymore, and only then we will be able to experience real bhakti, not before that. So, this is the same ladder which I showed, and the first 3 stages in this ladder, they are mostly karma. There may be some mixture of jnana. And the second 2, including Vishnu worship, there is quite prominent and pronounced contamination of jnana. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he came to Udupi, he chastised the followers of Madhvacharya, whom we officially, ex officio belong, and he said, you're mostly about karma and jnana. This is how we worship Vishnu, but because, again, the prayojana is not very clear. That Krishna is our goal, and love of Krishna is the process which we want to, by which we want to achieve him, the spontaneous devotion. Because, the sambandha is somewhat blurry, prayojana is not very clear, and abhideya is not very clear, then this contamination of karma and jnana become very prominent. Even for Vaishnavas. Even that we can see, unfortunately. So, and therefore they all say that this is basically their goal is mukti. Personal liberation, but still it's not very high destination in Vaikuntha. Of course, the climate there is very good, but I don't think we should really. strive for it. Anyway, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I will not dwell on this. There is a lot of text. I understand it's difficult. Bhaktivinoda Thakur very beautifully explains these three solutions: solution of karma, solution of jnana, and solution of bhakti. And he depicts here the mentality of karma mishra bhakta. He says, I have relationship with the universe as the enjoyer of the enjoyed. You know, this is my relationship. There is one portion of the material world which is the essence of pure enjoyment. I will go there to attain perfect happiness. Good luck. Anyway, so that's karma mishra. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that in this case, the Lord becomes limb of your karma. You use the Lord as the helper to achieve you. And he says there is no display of the independence of the Lord in the life of such people. The Lord is not an independent goal of yours. You basically want to enjoy. And then Jnana Mishra Bhakti, of course, we know matter is just opposite of Brahman. You want to reject it. You just disgusted with this material world. And you try to develop Vairagya. And actually, again, this is not good. This is not solution. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, he neither establishes himself in this world, nor does he finally attain a stable, non-material position. If you still didn't reach the highest possible destination, you're not stable. You're stuck in some level, and ultimately, I will also show you there will be a tendency to degrade the level of your consciousness. Even if you, by hard endeavor, you achieve something, there is a good chance that you will degrade to the lower stage, unfortunately. So it's not stable. The only stable position is to be the enjoyer of this world, complete sinner. That's very stable. Or to become the pure devotee. Everything else in between is not stable. It's just intermediary, some intermediate stages which are not very good. Anyway, so again, let's fix this ladder. It's very important. We have to come from the natural atheism, which is innate to every conditioned living entities, through agnosticism, some doubts about God, whether he exists or not, to religiosity, understanding that God is there and everything depends on him, and then desire to get rid of the material sufferings, coming to the higher level of regulated devotion or bhakti, Vaidhi bhakti. But again, this is not the goal. The goal is Raganuga sadhana, when we develop pure raga. So now we come to these two obstacles, and these two obstacles on the path of gradual elevation, I will explain it in detail. And the first problem is that this gradual process seems to be slow. And you become little disappointed and disillusioned. Sometimes this sort of mentality can be very relevant to us when we look at this level, when we hear spontaneous devotion, Raganuga Bhakti, we think, next lifetime, maybe. We become a little disappointed. You see this little human being who is looking up and the spontaneous devotion and, thinks, how will ever achieve this? So, yes, it's true. Generally, this is a very slow process. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I believe, in Bhakti Tattva Viveka, he quotes Adivaraha Purana. And he says that if one worships Ganesha for thousands of births and become free from sin, then it is possible to come to the platform of Vaishnavism. So, if you try to do this by conventional methods, it may take some time. Thousands of births by worshipping Ganesha, no problem, In comparison with the eternity, it's not such a long time. So, again, why this process is slow? Again, the explanation is given brilliantly by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Very important explanation which we have to understand. Why, in reality, this process of gradual elevation from stage to stage, from step to step, is slow. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains beautifully. Some people lament that they have not attained devotion to Krishna. Sometimes we lament, when will I attain devotion to Krishna? But at the same time, they do not make any real attempt to raise themselves to the level of Krishna Bhakti. They remain bound to one of the levels without due cause and do not make any attempt to progress, niyama agraha. If a person stops at one step, how he can expect to progress to the top? Many devotees on the level of Vaidhi Bhakti, listen, it's about you. Oh, it's about me. Many devotees on the level of Vaidhi Bhakti make no attempt to progress to Bhava Bhakti. Does it sound familiar? Many people remain attached to the rules of Varnashrama and are indifferent to Bhava and Prema. This is an obstacle to their own advancement. So the first problem, the first obstacle, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains here, and he will explain the mechanism of this, is that we tend to stick to the level which we are in. We really don't want to advance. We feel comfortable. We reach certain level. We reach certain level of advancement, and we have some perks and some advantages on this level. You become a senior devotee, no problem. Welcome to the club. You get all kinds of advantages, and you don't want. You're comfortable. You made it. I'm successful. I made my career in Hare Krishna movement. I am, a temple president. Or sannyasi, oh my goodness, I am a spiritual master. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, please listen how it works. Because we really have to clearly understand and analyze ourselves and do some introspection. This is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing, again in Chaitanya Shikshamrita. When a person is qualified to ascend to the next step, he must give up attachment to the old step. The tendency to cling to the old stage is called niyama agraha. Attachment to the rules, for the sake of rules. Clinging to outmoded rules. Because of this, the outcasts, listen, this is the most important. Because of this, the outcasts have no respect for the atheistic moralists. The atheistic moralists have no respect to pseudo-theistic moralists. The pseudo-theistic theists have no respect for the theistic moralists. The theistic moralists have no respect to the Vaidhi Bhaktas. And the Vaidhi Bhaktas have no respect to Ragatmika Bhakti. Because of such habit, the followers of Varnashrava often do not respect the Vaidhi Bhaktas. Those who are at the higher stage naturally have compassion to those on the lower stage, but until the lower situated people are fortunate, they cannot give up the stage and develop the taste to the higher stage. What Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying here, very importantly, that the problem is that when we achieve certain level, we cannot really appreciate the higher level. we try to denigrate them, we try to, offend them or whatever. It's going on because ultimately we want to stay comfortably on this particular level. And because of the lack of respect, we are not becoming fortunate. Because to become fortunate, we need the mercy of those who are on the higher level. And because we are not respecting them, how we can get their mercy? They're ready to give the mercy. Bhakti Vijnana Thakur says this. They're ready to give the mercy. They're ready to help us to elevate to the higher level, to get for us to some higher experience. But we are not ready to accept their mercy. So therefore, we remain unfortunate. So this one key word is very important, the respect to the higher possible level. We know, unfortunately, that's the situation. There was very elevated devotee. I will not name him. He was a, GBC member, but he was quite, ill-treated because he was on a very elevated level. And sometimes, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, those who are on the level of Vaidhi Bhakti, they cannot appreciate the higher level. Because they think this, what I am doing is the best. It's all in all. I don't need anything else. So this is the very, very, very dangerous mentality. And that's the first obstacle. We do not want to go further, and that manifests as the lack of respect to the higher position. We don't really learn how to appreciate somebody's bhakti, because it's not so obvious. In the material world, when we progress from one stage to another stage, that's quite obvious. We get some external insignia. Some people can see this piece of cloth and then, he's a very elevated Vaishnava. No, this is not the sign of elevation. The sign, the real bhakti is inside. So to progress, we have to learn how to appreciate bhakti, which is hidden within the heart of a devotee, which may not manifest externally according to the external, elevation in Krishna consciousness movement and so on and so forth. So therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in Tattva Sutra, in another book, he says that the symptom of actual worship is to make advancement on the path of raga. What we really have to understand, what is the driving force? What is the force which will drive us from one level of consciousness to another level of consciousness? This force is called raga. We have to really make advancement on the path of raga. This should be our prayer. I want to develop this sincere attachment to the Lord. The symptom of actual worship is to make advancement on the path of raga. However, if one remains entangled in other processes of worship, one will never achieve the goal of life. So, if our worship is not connected with the raga, if we don't understand that whatever I'm doing to achieve raga. Why do I chant Hare Krishna? Why do I study Srimad Bhagavatam? Why do I come to Mangal Arati? It's all to achieve raga. If we're very clear in our mind, I may not have raga, I don't have raga at this moment of time, but I'm doing this for this purpose. Then there will be elevation. If not, we will be stuck on a certain level. And we will be very comfortable, there's, Brahmacharya ashram is there and the Grihastha ashram is there. So that's the first problem. And again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives very interesting things. He says, those who are fortunate to receive the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, listen, it's very important, however, can progress very quickly. In a short lifespan, a person can easily progress from Varnashrama to the highest level of prema Those who have taken shelter of the rules of gradual development do not have to wait for another birth to elevate themselves. Lord Chaitanya, because he saw such a beautiful and powerful emblem of raga, if we keep him in mind as our goal and remember about him and his example and his teachings while practicing Krishna Bhakti, very quickly the elevation will take place. However, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, those who act like dead fish and simply float in the currents of fate, in the ocean of material existence, advancing and retreating with the ebb and flow of the tide, can hardly attain the desired goal. So you can choose whether you become an ecstatic bhakta or you become a dead fish, floating in the current of ISKCON's ocean. ISKCON is like an ocean. And you can be floating in this current here and there, no problem. So the choice is ours. This is a very graphic example of the dead fish. So that's the first obstacle, and the slow progress when we basically consciously slow down our progress. When we don't understand the driving force, when we don't know the mechanism, and instead we're employing our natural tendency to remain on a certain level. But it's not the only obstacle. Another obstacle is even much more grave, that there is a tendency of some degradation of consciousness. As I said, no stage in this ladder is stable, besides the highest one and the lowest one. And therefore, if you are in any of these intermediate stages, there will be a chance of degradation of consciousness, and the mechanism of degradation is called, what is the mechanism of degradation? How it's called? Aparada. It's called offense, aparada. And when we are in the society of devotees, there is a plenty of opportunities for aparada. It's ample of opportunity. There are so many opportunities to advance, but there is so much opportunities to degrade. When we don't have the genuine appreciation of the higher bhaktas. And the tendency, the material tendency, is to become jealous to them. And to try to, to offend them, because who they think they are. I'm the most elevated bhakta. So it's a very dangerous thing. And therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, no respect, no respect, no respect, no respect. Because it's natural not to respect somebody who is higher. For the material consciousness, for conditioned living entity, it's natural not to look up at him. It's rather natural to look down at him or try to offend him. And therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says, Bhavo pi abhavam ayati. Even if you reach the level of bhava, this bhava can become abhava. Abhava means non-existent. You reach the level of bhava and it disappears. Why it disappears? And he says actually, by the offense against the dearest devotee of the Lord, if the offense is grave, then the real bhava will be destroyed. If the offense is medium, the bhava will turn into bhava abhas. If the offense is slight, the bhava will become an inferior type. What he wants to say is that depending on the gravity of your offense, your degradation will be very quick or it may be a little slow. You don't have to fall down immediately to the lowest possible level. Sometimes people, they offend other people left and right, and still they practice devotional service. And you think, what's wrong with them, or what's wrong with devotional service? Why they're still practicing it? Actually, probably the devotees whom they offend may not be so elevated, therefore they're still in, there's still the degradation of consciousness will definitely take place. There is no doubt about it. When you offend somebody, when your mentality is offensive, your material tendencies will be turned on, the previous material tendencies, but still you may remain for some time on some intermediate level. You don't necessarily have to fall down to the lowest possible level. If you still maintain the respect and appreciation and adoration to the, to Srila Prabhupada, to other very elevated devotees. So depending on the gravity of your offense and depending on whom you're offending, your bhava will be diminished. It basically means that the intensity of your devotion will be diminished. The level of your practice will be diminished. This is all unfortunate things. And Srila Jiva Goswami comments on this verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by the two types of grave offenses: offense to the dearest devotee and to Krishna himself. Krishna preshta aparadha adhataha. Even the real bhakta, even real bhava is destroyed. Even the real bhava bhakti, emotional, involvement with Krishna will be destroyed. By medium offense, bhava becomes bhava basa. By slight offense, bhava degrades its category. Becoming an inferior type means that there will be degradation in terms of 5 rasas in the 8 stages of Mahabhava or Rati, and thus change in bhava will take place according to the seriousness of offense. So here's a very beautiful example of it. This is actually the ancient picture of Akrura giving Syamantaka jewel back to Krishna. And we know Akrura is a very elevated devotee. He was the one who brought Krishna from Vrindavan to Mathura. And his prayers are example of the prayers. He is actually the example of Vandana, the process of devotional service. Prayers in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. But then he became worshipper of whom? Of Surya. Why? Because the offense. Whom did he offend? Gopis. Yes. Because of his grave offense. Because he offended Gopis, and his offense was not that he took Krishna, but actually the Acharyas explained that his offense was that he didn't beg the permission of the Gopis or whatever. Anyway, so he made this offense, so his devotion was downgraded to a very serious level, and to the second level of Surya worship, and therefore it's very bad. So basically there are 2 obstacles. One obstacle is lower progress, slow progress in this ladder, when we don't know how to do it, and sometimes we are lacking elevated association. Another one is the degradation of consciousness. And let's take the example of other religions, because as I said, that there is ample of opportunities to study the history of other religions, to understand how the degradation takes place. I will not go into details. It's a very big subject matter. Actually, it's the whole course should be given to ISKCON devotees, and I think everyone should take this course of the history of other religions, because there is a lot to learn. So the degradation of the religious practice basically has two big stages. Actually, it's three stages. I will explain shorter. So this is two stages. There is one preliminary stage which I will explain. Usually, the first stage of degradation of the religion as the institution. Before I was talking about the individual problems. Problem for each and every one of us. These two obstacles on our individual path. Now I'm talking about the institutions. If we study other religions, the first stage of degradation of a religion can be called niyama agraha, which is forgetfulness of the real goal and attachment to the rules for the sake of rules. And that's relevant to the institution, and it's relevant to us as well, as individual bhaktas. We forget about the goal, and because we forget about the goal becomes blurry, not really relevant. We kind of say, okay, who am I to achieve pure love of Krishna in Vraj? Okay, let me do something. And I'm still a bhakta, I'm still doing something, I'm a good bhakta. I'm coming every day for Mangalarati. So this is called niyama agraha. This is basically means attachment to the rules for the sake of rules. I will give some examples of this. And we can see it, people will become obsessed. Even in ISKCON, we can see people become obsessed with these external rules. Just follow these rules. Too much talk about this. Why? Because the goal, and we substitute the real goal, which is supposed to be in our bead bag, with all kinds of rules, tedious rules. And the next stage of degradation is niyama agraha, with a short a, which is neglect of the rules. First, usually the rules become the rules, for the sake of rules, and the next stage we reject the rules. And that's what's happening also in ISKCON. Sometimes people become so obsessed with the rules, and then they go to this, another extreme, and they neglect the rules. So, basically, the first alternative is called karma, rules for the rules. And the second alternative, rejection of the rules, is called jnana, when we reject. And in this way, we lose bhakti. Karma and jnana, they always opposed to each other. And, people, initially, when the great Acharya comes, he establishes some rules, and then his followers tend to forget about the goal and just follow the rules. And then ultimately comes somebody and says, well, this is all, external, let's become real bhaktas, and they reject the rules. So the historical examples of this from Judaism is there were, I don't know how you pronounce them, Sadducees, right? They were really, what happened with Judaism? It's a very interesting story. Initially, the revelation which was there, there was about God and soul, and there was actually quite a great deal of pure bhakti in the Judaism. But then one teacher came, and the teacher said, he was a good teacher, and he said, you should follow the rules because, how did he say this? His name was Saduk, and on his behalf, the followers are called Sadducees. He actually said that you should try to follow the rules without gaining some remuneration for following the rules. He basically said you should try to follow the rules very purely, without expecting some reward. So his followers, listen how it works. His followers said, oh, we follow the rules, and there will be no reward in the next world. Our teacher said there will be no reward. So there will be no reward in the next world. So it means that there is no soul. It means that there is no use to strive here. So the reward will be there if we follow the rules here. So let's follow the rules very diligently, and we'll get the proper reward for this. So he was teaching them, you follow the rules purely, and they rejected this and said, let's follow these rules very, very diligently, and then definitely we will get a lot of rewards there. So, and they become really obsessed with this very strict following these rules of Moses, and they were following them. There was 613 rules. You know, if you complain that 4 regulative principles is too much, you know, you can become a Jew and you will have to follow 613 different rules. So they were very strictly following this and condemning everyone who is not following them very strictly. So as a reaction to their strict following, the Pharisees appeared. They were the opposing party, and the Pharisees says, no, we shouldn't follow the rules too strictly. We should figure out how to follow the rules. They couldn't reject the rules because it's such a, heavy karmic religion. But we should somehow or other find a way how to follow the rules and at the same time not to follow the rules. A very beautiful example, it's very beautiful example. In the Moses rules, it is said that on Shabbat, you cannot travel. On Saturday, you should not travel. But what to do if you need to travel on Saturday? So at the same time, it is said, if you're on the water, this is the exception. If on Saturday you happen to be on a ship and the ship is flowing, you cannot really stop the ship because you are in a river, and the river is flowing. So this is the exception. So the Pharisees come and they say, you cannot travel on Saturday, but you can travel on Saturday if you are on the water. So what to do? You take the cart and the bull, and you put the bag with water, and you sit on the bag with water, and in this way you can travel. And in this way you can travel on Saturday. This is what they did. It's still going on. They wrote the whole book about this, the whole Talmudic explanation, how to follow the rules without following the rules. So, and it's going on in ISKCON also, how to follow the rules without following the rules. So this is karma and jnana, and then, Christians came and they rejected these Pharisees. For them, Pharisees were too much into the rules. And then, Protestants came and they rejected everything. So it's going on. This process of karma jnana is going on. Why? Because there's no bhakti. So I said, please listen very carefully. I said that besides these 2 problems of niyama agraha and niyama agraha, following the rules for the sake of rules and the not following the rules at all, there is another problem, which actually precedes these 2 problems. very important. This preceding initial problem, which may not be even clearly noticeable, is depriving the object of our worship, our prayojana, God, of his personal features. First, you make him little impersonal. It will be little difficult with Krishna, but, if you really try, you can do it. So, that's what went on in other religions. The notion of personal God with very intense personal relationship is there in every religion. In Judaism is there, in Muslim religion is there. But the followers, they become bewildered while reading these scriptures when too much personal description is there. Like, for example, there is this Song of the Songs in Bible, which describes very beautifully bhakti. Many followers of Judaic tradition, they cannot understand, they cannot relate to it, and they ultimately reject it. At one point, they were even arguing to reject it completely from the canon, from the Bible, because it's too much personal. When for 30 years, the priests, the brahmanas of Jews were in exile in Babylon. They were actually captured by Babylon, and by that time their scripture was practically destroyed. So when they came back, they were trying to restore the scripture, and what happened, please listen very carefully, because this may happen with our movement as well. They were restoring the scriptures, they were writing the scriptures, but whenever they would meet personal description of God, they would become bewildered, and they would try to put it in such a way that it's not so personal. And there was even a manual of how to put these personal descriptions of God in such a way that it will not really disturb the face of some Mayavadi Bhakta. For example, in the original Bible, it was said that God was standing before Moses in his glory. And the recommendation was, instead of saying that God was standing in front of Moses in his glory, you should say, glory of God was standing in front of Moses. Not God himself, the glory of God. So, if it is said that, there's so many other things, is there, this is what people are concerned when they say about editing Prabhupada's books. I'm not against Bhagavad Gita as it is edited by Jayadvaita Maharaj. I have greatest respect to Jayadvaita Maharaj, and I'm sure Jayadvaita Maharaj, when he was carefully editing Bhagavad Gita, he was actually restoring the original words of Srila Prabhupada. But what may happen in the future, I am not referring to this, is that because followers don't have this real experience that God is a person, that they will try to explain these personal descriptions of God in an impersonal way, in symbolic way. It's actually, it's not Krishna who is dancing rasa dance, and it's just a symbolic description of some impersonal love of the soul with God. Sometimes you hear these explanations, right? No, Krishna, it's nothing symbolic there. Krishna is dancing with all his decorations and everything. So this is what is preceding. You deprive God of his personal features. The intensity of your raga is diminished. It's not the goal to develop this intense personal love of God. It's blurred. It's already not there. It's kind of eclipsed. And then, rules for the sake of rules, and then ultimately reject the rules. This is how it goes on. This is the way of degradation of religion. This is the way of dharmasya glani, which Sri Krishna is explaining. And therefore, please listen how actually Bhakti Vijnana Thakur. Oh, sorry, I'm so late. Is it okay if I few more minutes? Bhakti Vijnana Thakur says that actually Bhakti synthesizes karma and jnana. Bhakti doesn't reject rules. Mahaprabhu has taught that man with attachment for worldly enjoyment gets strength from the practice of these rules to carry on comfortably the maintenance of body and family. Those with too much attachment are advised to follow the rules of varnashrama, and this will qualify them for bhakti. Varnashrama is good. This is the level, Varnashrama starts on the level of Surya worship. Varnashrama is there on the level of Ganesh worship. It's not bad, but those people who practice Varnashrama without making bhakti the goal go to hell, even though they follow their prescribed duties. I mean, it's very heavy, but it's Bhakti Vijnana Thakur, he says. If you don't understand the goal of following the rules, you follow all the rules. You're very paka, but what is the result? So the solution which Bhakti Vijnana Thakur gives is, please remember the goal. And please have the higher association, and please respect those who are on a higher level of devotion. Please respect those who have more attachment than you. And here's the next slide. I only have a couple more. Those following Vaidhi Bhakti should think of dedication to the Lord as their principal work in life. It is cultivation. It is a cultivation performed not from fear or hatred, but with affection and love. That is the meaning of favorable. Though it is necessary to maintain body following the rules of Varnashrama, the devotee never allows those rules to overpower his devotion of the Lord. Those rules always remain as followers of the cultivation of the Lord. So we should be very careful. Yes, we should follow the rules. Rules of Varnashrama included. Very important because it's necessary for our healthy well-being. And for our practice, but we shouldn't allow these rules to overpower bhakti or eclipse bhakti. The following, those following Vaidhi Bhakti should think of dedication to the Lord as their principal work in life. It is, it's the same, sorry. So we need pure association, and I will... couple more slides. Forgetting Krishna is never allowed. All other prohibitions mentioned in the Shastras have arisen from this main prohibition. Keeping this main prescription in mind while advancing, the practitioner should give up his attachment for the prescriptions of the previous level and accept the prescriptions of the next level. In other words, if we remember the goal, the goal is Krishna, the goal is spontaneous devotion of Krishna, then we will be progressing smoothly. While having the elevated association with advanced Vaishnavas. Otherwise, we will be guilty of niyamagraha. So that's the main solution which he gives. And he says here, this is again from Krishna Samhita, we want to come to the platform of Shuddha Vaishnava Dharma, complete dedication to the Supreme Consciousness of Vishnu Tattva or Krishna. Those who are really Paramahamsa are never concerned with external appearances, practices, and conceptions of the individual. Rather, they see in what direction one's dedication is going. So, what it means that you can be bhakti in any of these levels. But if your dedication is to the highest possible level, you're okay, you're fine. If you're really fixed in your prayojana, and your prayojana is very firmly fixed within your heart. This is what I want to achieve. Very quickly, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, within one lifetime, you will progress through this ladder of devotion. You will definitely achieve it. No need to wait for 1,000 lifetimes. So your dedication should be to the highest possible goal, no matter where you are now, and you may be on any of other levels, and for that you need good association, and there is a quote to this regard. There's a good fortunate to associate with pure devotee while they are engaging in chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Then you can get rid of all your ideas. So, and the last quote, which is there, the scriptural conclusion is that Shaktas, worshippers of goddess Durga, are gradually elevated to bhakti by first becoming worshippers of Sun God, then worshippers of Ganesha, then worshippers of Shiva, then Pancopasana Vaishnavas, and finally Sampradayika Vaishnavas. By the careful analysis of the words of the scriptures, it is understood that by the influence of association with pure devotees, Chaya Bhakti Abhas transforms into pure devotion. So we need association of more elevated Vaishnavas all the time in our path, in our journey. We should not neglect it, we should not forget it. And the main purpose of somebody who is playing the role of a teacher is to remind all those who are under him about the real goal. So his duty, his sacred duty towards his counselees or whoever they are, because we're all teachers to somebody, we're all setting an example to somebody. If we want to help them really, we should not confuse them with the goal. Prayojana is the most important, and for that, of course, we have to fix our sambandha, and then the practice will follow on whatever level they are. Gradually they will be elevated, and they will achieve the final goal. This is the narrow path to the final goal. That's it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.